In the tranquil villages of Switzerland, beneath a blanket of snow and silence, few suspected that something ancient and apocalyptic was unfolding behind velvet curtains and ceremonial doors. In October 1994, a series of perfectly orchestrated deaths shattered the calm. It wasn't a political coup, it wasn't war, it was belief. 74 people died between 1994 and 1997. Many by fire, some by poison, others by gunshot. Not in a battlefield, but in quiet homes, chalets, and hidden temples. They were doctors, architects, musicians, lovers, and they belonged to something they called the Order of the Solar Temple. The order didn't begin with death. It began with devotion, with a fascination for ancient wisdom, astrology, and the Templar Knights of the Middle Ages. The 1970s were ripe for spiritual revolution. People were tired of traditional religion, yet desperate for connection. The esoteric became fashionable. It was in this atmosphere that Jouret, a Belgian doctor known for his charisma and oratory skills, met Joseph de Mambro, a man steeped in occultism and ritual. Jouret brought vision and presence. De Mambro brought the doctrine. Together, they created a belief system that was both theatrical and terrifying. They spoke of cosmic cycles, of apocalyptic transitions. Earth was corrupt, they said, but a new age would rise from the ashes. The Order of the Solar Temple was the ark to carry them into this new age. Through secret rituals and ascension ceremonies, members believed they could purify their souls and prepare for the next life on a distant star. The order was organized like a pyramid. At the bottom, initiates. At the top, the elite few who knew the whole doctrine. De Mambro ruled this inner circle like a monarch. He declared his daughter to be the divine child, claimed he was the reincarnation of an ancient Templar. Every item, from robes to rings to the Order of Candles, held symbolic meaning. Followers were not coerced in the traditional sense. They were invited, seduced by the sacred, by a vision of spiritual grandeur. The elite spoke with eloquence, promised harmony, promised clarity in a chaotic world. To many, this wasn't a cult, it was a sanctuary. Throughout the 1980s, the order expanded, first in Switzerland, then in Canada and France. Members included professionals, government officials, artists. Meetings were discreet, public image was polished. They held banquets, lectures, published writings on philosophy and mysticism. But behind closed doors, things darkened. De Mambro controlled members' relationships, finances, even their children. Questions were punished. Dissent was exile. One of the most powerful elements of the order's doctrine was the belief in ascension, that through fire, ritual, and death, one could transcend the physical world and travel to Sirius, a star believed to be the origin of higher consciousness. To many outsiders, this sounded absurd, but to insiders it was woven through every sermon, every symbol. De Mambro claimed that only through ritual purification could the soul survive the coming planetary destruction. And so they began to prepare, not for war, but for departure. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of the order was its children. Born into doctrine, many were raised believing they were part of a cosmic mission. De Mambro presented his daughter as a messianic figure, a being sent to lead the next generation. Children were dressed in ceremonial garb, taught celestial charts instead of arithmetic. They weren't simply members, they were vessels of a prophecy. But cracks began to show. In 1993, a young member discovered that De Mambro had faked many of the order's miracles, including the conception of his divine daughter. Others discovered financial fraud. The veil of mystery was slipping. Defections followed, so did questions. De Mambro and Jouret grew paranoid. Their authority was weakening. The narrative had to be sealed. In 1994, a member named Tony Dutoit, who had left the order and exposed De Mambro's secrets, was found murdered along with his wife and infant son. The baby had been labeled the Antichrist by De Mambro. It was no longer about faith, it was about silencing threats. This act was the final signal. The ritual was ready. The end was near. In Switzerland and Quebec, at nearly the same hour, ritual mass suicides were carried out. Bodies arranged in star formations, robes draped, altars lit. Some were sedated, others shot. A few resisted only to be killed. Then the structures burned, homes, chalets, temples consumed in fire. Investigators would find ceremonial music still playing, timers, candles, instructions on how to die. It wasn't chaos, it was theater, choreographed death. The news shocked the world. In the following days, papers printed photos of charred buildings and lists of the dead. Who were these people? Why did they die together? Could it happen again? For some survivors and defectors, guilt turned to silence. Others spoke out trying to explain what words barely could. That inside the order, death had felt like a beginning, not an end. The suicides didn't stop. In 1995 and 1997, more bodies were found in France and Quebec. Ritualistic, arranged, controlled. The order may have collapsed publicly, but its flame still flickered in the hearts of the few who remained loyal. Some scholars believe the total death toll exceeds 90. Others suspect more deaths were covered up, disguised as accidents. Today, the order is gone. Its temples are ashes, its leaders dead. But its story remains, not as a curiosity, but as a warning. The desire for meaning is human, but belief, when wielded like a sword, becomes deadly. The line between faith and fanaticism is thinner than we think. Dead men don't tell tales, but the fire they lit still burns in memory. And here we listen, one tale at a time.